Welcome back to the Gentleman Badass. Josh Kidney, as usual, with me, Mick Doyle.
Hello.
As usual. And today we've got an extra special guest. I think I've said that about the last couple, but this is actually an extra special guest because, believe it or not, you're the first woman to be on the Gentleman Badass podcast. So we have got Thea, and how do I don't know if I should give your actual last name or the online last name, whichever you prefer. What last name would you like?
You can just call me Van Syoc. That's my last name,
right,
yeah.
So Thea Van Syoc, and we'll talk a little bit about her internet presence and whatnot. But I've gotten to know Thea over the last couple of years, and she's just a really cool person and with a lot of really interesting talents. So I want to kind of get into those today. So Thea, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And you talked me up a little bit too much. I'm not that interesting. This is probably going to be the most boring podcast you guys have.
But you are the first woman to appear on the Gentleman Badass, so...
So we like to kind of start with the beginning, where you grew up, what it was like growing up, maybe some details that stick out from your early life that maybe led you in this direction. So get us started there. What was your early life like?
Good, but rough.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Oregon, but the cool part of Oregon, I'm from Southern Oregon. Nothing to do with Portland. I think people have this conception that when they think of Oregon, Portland is the only thing that comes to mind, but there is so much more to the state than just that. So I grew up in a very rural place, like a type of place where it's like you don't like see like your neighbors really, you know, like I grew up in the woods running around. Like I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a logger by trade, so he was like always cutting down trees and always doing that kind of stuff. So I would just kind of always like follow him around. Yeah, but I grew up just super active.
Okay.
Like just really active, always outside, like always in the outdoors. Like I love nature, loved animals, like all that kind of stuff. I think I was probably just kind of like a little wild child, honestly.
Nice.
Sports in high school?
No, I wasn't. So growing up really rural, like my family, like I grew up like pretty like, I'm gonna be honest, like dirt poor. So we didn't have a lot of money, so I never got to play sports because doing sports in school was pretty expensive. And then it's so rural, it's like I lived, like it was a 30-minute drive from like home to school. So like I would have, you know, like hour and a half long like bus rides to get to and from school. So it's like my mom worked in like the opposite town a lot of the time. So it's like it would have been like an hour drive for her to pick me up from school like after a sporting event or something like that. So I didn't play sports growing up. It wasn't until high school actually we finally moved to like the bigger like city. It wasn't a city, it was like 30,000 people, but that was like big, right? And I tried out for my high school dance team. That was like the one thing my mom would let me. I was terrible. Like I'm so bad. I can't even clap to a beat. Okay. So like imagine me trying to dance. Like I was super athletic, which is probably the only reason why I made the team. Like I could do like crazy leaps, like turn, all that kind of stuff. But like I could not like stay on beat. Like let me tell you what, that was terrible. Like I was always off. I cannot count music. I can't, like it just does not function. It doesn't work like that in my brain. So I was really bad at it. And then to be honest, like the coaches were total bitches. Like they were like the girls who like peaked in high school type of like women, you know, who just, I don't know, but they were just straight up bitches. So I did it like 1 year and then I tried it again another year and then I just like was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this shit anymore. So that's about it as far as high school. Oh, I tried out for soccer too, I think like my junior, senior year. And of course, like I had never played soccer before. So of course I didn't make the fucking team. They're like, we're not going to go. It's like I was fast. Like we had to do one day, we had to do like sprints. Like they had to do like 100-yard sprints or whatever. I had sprinted the whole fucking like soccer team. Like, because they were like, whoever gets there first doesn't have to do sprints the rest of the afternoon. So I was like, done. Like, literally, like, I've always been super fast twitch athlete, like, really good fucking sprinter. Like, honestly, if I probably would have done, like, track and field all throughout, like, middle school, high school, I probably, not to toot my own horn, I probably would have ended up with, like, a scholarship to somewhere. Like, that was something that I was always known for. Like, every PE teacher, like, I remember in, like, middle school, we did, like, these, like, Olympic trials or whatever, and, like, I just crushed everybody, like boys, girls, didn't matter, like sprinting, like 100-yard dash, like I will fucking smoke you all. Like distance, no, don't ask me to run a mile.
They didn't ask you to play goalie? Because usually that's the position where the kids who come in to try out who've never played soccer, they always need a goalie. So
They're like this dumb chick is scared of the ball. Like I remember there was like one day where this girl's like throwing kicks and they're like, okay, to get out of the group, you have to like headbutt or whatever the fuck. And I was
head
like,
the ball.
I'm not fucking taking a ball to the face. Like, no. So I was like, yeah, like kind of pretending like, yeah, I'm trying to get it and I just can't.
Yeah.
Like, no. Probably another reason why I didn't make the team.
Go over there and dance off rhythm with those people again.
Yeah, no.
Well, that's funny because I would have never guessed that. I would have thought you were a high school athlete because I've done jiu-jitsu. We'll get into jiu-jitsu, but I've rolled with you, and you are certainly an athlete. I figured you were a gymnast. You feel like someone who's done gymnastics, or I've done jiu-jitsu with guys who've played like goalie as hockey players, and that's kind of the same feel that I got from you. So that's interesting. I will also say I'm a musician and I can't dance. So I think that's why I was drawn to jiu-jitsu versus Muay Thai, because when I came in here, I was like, I want to kickbox, but I'm so bad on my feet that, in jiu-jitsu you fall down and that's generally where the fight starts anyway. So
I got it from here. I'm on my back. I'm good.
You just lay down.
Yeah. So then, shooting. Let's get into shooting. When did you end up getting into firearms and shooting, and when did that come to be a part of your life?
So my family, like living up in the country, they always had like guns, but it was like long guns, like rifles, shotguns, like, rifles for like hunting, shotguns. Like my family was like super into like skeet shooting and stuff like that. But I could care less. Like I didn't care. And ironically enough, like they were not into like, they're kind of like against handguns. Like they were not into handguns. Like I didn't even see a real handgun for the first time until like maybe like my late teens. I'd never seen one in like real life. But I originally got into shooting myself in 2015, and it was literally just because I saw a YouTube video of a female professional shooter shooting a 3-gun match. Her name's Jana Reeves. Like she used to be like the shit. I mean, I'm sure she still is the shit, but I haven't really seen much of her. But I saw a video of her just like smoking like this 3-gun stage where she was like going, she was like shooting shotgun and rifle and handgun, and that was like, holy shit. I was like, women are doing this shit? I was like, this is fucking awesome. I was like, I want to fucking do that. So I decided that I was going to start shooting. That same year, though, I originally just wanted to do competitive shooting. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I was like, I want to shoot 3-gun. That was my dream. To this day, I've never shot a 3-gun match. I shot plenty of stuff. I've never shot a 3-gun match. But that same year, there was a shooting on a college campus. So I'm from rural Southern Oregon. There's another town like a couple hours away. It's like an old retirement town. And there was like a mass shooting on a college campus. Like you hear mass shooting and that word is thrown around like way too often. But like legit, like what you would think active shooter situation, some rando guy goes into school, he ends up like killing 10 people, including himself, just on like a community college campus. And that was just such a huge eye-opening experience that something that massive could happen in a place so small. And it was a huge wake-up call for me. So at that time, I was like, I need to get a concealed handgun permit. I need to start training because this isn't just, a fun thing. Like this could be a life-saving tool one day that I might, need. So that's what really sparked it. And so I was like, I'm a shooter now.
Okay.
Kind of. But I was really terrible. I was a really bad shooter.
Were there resources out there to get training at that time?
I did not have any YouTube. I learned from the University of YouTube. Like a lot of the shit that I have learned is literally YouTube. Like I started watching videos from like Travis Haley and Jerry Michalek and stuff like that. Like all those, like badass like type dudes. Like I literally just started watching their instructional videos, and that is originally like how I learned how to shoot. I didn't have any the first time I actually even met an instructor in real life was like I took my concealed handgun permit, and that class, ironically enough, was like a woman, and she would only do like small private like like little sessions, like no more than like 3 people at a time. And I was just like, oh my god. And again, I was like, oh, maybe one day like I would like to teach, I would like to instruct, because I just thought it was so cool how she just knew her shit and just how helpful she was and how patient and how kind. That was like another time when like another like strong kind of like woman inspired me to strive for something else. But that was the first time, and then I didn't have any instruction until like several years like after that, maybe like 2018 or 2017, 2018 or something like that was the next time I actually met. Like, there's not a lot, like in Southern Oregon, especially at the time, there was not a lot of like instructors really, and the ones that were like really like hokey, kind of like I'm new to shooting and I can already outshoot you. That's probably not a good sign.
Yeah. It's not the guy you want to be trained on.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't want to be trained by somebody who like can't perform better than me when I am at such a low level already. So yeah.
So what'd you start shooting? Did you have just guns in the family? Did you go out and buy something for yourself? How did you start?
So I was able to get a hold of a Gen 2 Glock 19. So the gun was like the same age as me pretty much at that point. Like, and I shot the shit out of that gun. Like, I love it. So like Glock will always hold a special place in my heart because that was like what I initially learned how to shoot on. And then my first carry gun that I was like, my concealed was like a Glock 43 because it had come out like, you know, around that kind of time. I would like, don't even touch that gun anymore at this point because it sucks to shoot. Quite frankly, there's a lot of better options out there right now. And like anytime somebody sees it, they're like, "Why do you have that one and not the
43?
43. Yeah, 40. They're like, "Why do you have?" I'm like, "Well, this came out like 6 years before the 43X. Okay, like it's not like they came out with the 43X and that was like an option. So otherwise, I definitely would have bought that instead of a 43 because." Let's face it, that gun sucks to shoot.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is so shitty.
So from there, the way that I first heard about you, I know you kind of made a trip out here to do some training, but then I got a hold of your Instagram. So how did that whole thing start? Was that like a goal of yours, or did you just start publishing things and it? How did that whole thing start for you?
So that whole thing kind of came about. So before I ever had like a gun page, I had kind of like a fitness page that I had grown, you know, like pretty large. I just posted, you know, because I've always been into like the gym, fitness, that kind of stuff. So I decided, because at the time when I was like looking at Instagram, I was looking at stuff, that was like the days of when everybody posted like the best of their best, the most badass highlight reels where nobody ever fucked up and everything was perfect and everybody's doing these sub-second draws with all this shit. And I was just like, are there any regular people out there? Like, is there anybody like me who just, you know, wants to get better and wants to try and become a good shooter, you know? And especially during that time, too, there was no women who were really, like, posting shooting. I mean, there was a lot of chicks, you know, look at me with my gun. You know, there was a lot of that, like, gun bunny stuff, but there wasn't really very many women who were, like, actually shooting or posting shooting videos. And so I started it kind of as like a way, because I was inspired to pick up shooting because of a female shooter. I just so happened to one day come across a YouTube video. And then I was inspired to one day teach because I came across a female instructor. And so in my mind, having that, if I wouldn't have had that representation, I don't think I would be where I am today. Like if I wouldn't have seen either one of those. And so I was like, well, maybe I could help inspire somebody else. Like maybe if somebody sees me and they see, you know, I'm not a great shooter, but I'm trying to get better. I'm posting everything. Like, here's my fuck up video, but here's my video where I'm actually able to, you know, do the drill properly. Like, here's my dry fire practice that I'm doing. Maybe if somebody sees me, they might be inspired to do that too. So I started it as kind of like a way to maybe, you know, reach other people who might be interested in potentially doing it, or maybe somebody, they don't know they want to do it until they see somebody else who's like doing it. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm feeling I'm talking in circles.
No. So since you're one of the first to kind of be doing this stuff, did you meet resistance, trolls, all that stuff? Were you prepared for the Instagram, YouTube experts that are out there?
The underbelly of the internet?
Yeah.
No. Okay, so there's been, with the social media, there was like a lot of good and a lot of bad. I would say actually probably way more bad than good. You know, I was able to meet some really great people, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Barrett Fawbush, True Exodus. Like, he really kind of like took me under his wing, and he was a really good mentor for me, especially with like showing me the ropes of like the social media, you know, stuff. And then I learned a lot of like shooting and stuff from him. But then in that same vein, for every one of him like good person, there was like 1,000 shitheads. Like, and I quickly understood why women don't push like post shooting videos on Instagram because let's be faced, especially around that time, like most people were like dickheads. There was like a lot of trolls. Like I've had everything from like, I mean, me, like, you know, like actually out there shooting, trying to shoot. It's like people, they see a woman with a gun. It's like, oh, you're automatically a gun bunny. Like you're just some dumb chick who has a gun. Oh, cool. Or the, you fucking suck. And it's like, well, yeah, I fucking suck, but I'm like trying to get better. Like not everybody is amazing at every single thing that they pick up. Like all of these people you see now who are amazing, like they started somewhere. Like they weren't good right from the beginning. But it's like if you're bad or not good or not amazing like they think you should be and you post those videos and you're going to get a lot of fucking hate. Like a lot of fucking hate. And then a lot of fucking weird, creepy perverts too.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can't tell you the amount of dudes who have asked to see my feet. Like I don't fucking know, but I am fortunate in the fact that I never did receive an unsolicited dick pic. Apparently that's a thing, but I also post with my clothes on the majority of the time, so I guess that's probably why I never ended up with like a bunch of dick pics. So that's like one thing women complain about. I get all these dick pics, and I'm like, well, yeah, your tits and ass are out, so of course, I mean, you're kind of sending, like, whether you want to believe it or not, you're kind of sending a message here, so, I mean, that's on you, but I haven't received a dick pic, but... And then again, I posted my clothes on.
So since you're able to censor some of the weirdos by just the nature of what you do, more professional, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How do you circumvent social media trying to censor you doing gun stuff? Because I know, like you mentioned, True Exodus, he had a hell of a time, and still does. Like even when he advertises his courses now, he doesn't say anything. He's usually, that's the target that he's aiming at, that you happen to be looking at. So I mean, I know that it's a really difficult world to navigate when you're, it's not controversial to us, but to people that run social media companies, gunfighting and gun instruction is super controversial.
Evil.
Yeah. So how have you learned to, or how do you navigate that, trying to get your message out?
That's been really difficult. I think I've been lucky. Like I am shadow banned. Like if you type in my Instagram handle, like Van Thea, like you have to type in my whole handle word for word. When it used to be like if you typed up Van, it would be like Vans, and then like I would pop up next. Now it's like you have to type in my full name to find me because I'm shadow banned. I have to have like, if I have a really good popular post, sometimes I might show up in somebody's like explore feed or whatever, but I think the key is one, like I don't really try and advertise, like sell things, you know, you gotta be very careful about how you word and how you present content. Like I try to focus more on like the educational type aspect a lot of the times. I mean, sometimes I'll try and post, you know, something entertaining, but focusing on that I think helps. And then I think what it really comes down to is if you're in, you know, posting in the firearms community, like you can see a lot of accounts now are getting this notification like you're not going to be shown in the Explorer feed, you're not going to be shown to other pages. And so how you get reach is just by posting, I think, good quality content that people who do follow you want to share. Because if people who do follow you are sharing your content, of course you're getting this organic reach.
Organic, yeah,
and I think that's the only way, honestly, to do it. So I know I've done a good job with my content if I have like a lot of shares, and when I do have a lot of shares, I can see in my analytics like, oh, this post reached like a lot of non-followers because the people who do follow me were sharing my content to the people who follow them, and that's kind of the only way to get around it. And I think I don't post a whole lot anymore, and I think that's also kind of helped me sneak by, is I'm not constantly posting all the time. Like right now I post maybe 5 times a month or something, like tops, and I think that's kind of helped me like sneak by too, because it seems like those people who are posting a lot and super consistently get hammered way harder than the people who tend to post a little bit
I notice
less.
a lot of people on my feed keep kind of dropping off, and I've often wondered, like, I didn't unfollow them, I didn't, like, they were showing up, but when I'd go to their page to find out, well, did they block me? And then all their stuff is there, I'm just not, it's not showing up.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I've noticed that too. Like, there would be people who I like followed for years, and I'm like, I haven't seen their content in forever. And I'll go to their page, and sometimes it shows that I'm not even following them anymore. And it's like, I never unfollowed this person, but now I'm not following. And it's weird. I don't know what it is, but of course they're, like a firearms related page or something. But it's kind of weird, the sneaky little things that they, do. So I think I've just been fortunate enough to kind of sneak by just because, I don't post that often. And when I do post, I try and make it something that's like really engaging, like shareable content, something that people see and they like want to show their friends or want to, share with other people. Yeah.
So, and I might not know the whole story. Is your Instagram kind of how you became involved with 88 Tactical? From what I remember, I think you came out for a training course or something like that, and then eventually were hired. How did that come about?
Yeah, so every company that I've ever worked with was able to find me through like my social media. Like they approached me through my social media channel. So yeah, Shay had reached out to me, and it was like actually I think the first time was in maybe like 2017 or 2018, and I was still like really growing my following. My following was like really growing at that point. And he had invited me out to do training, but I just never had that, like things didn't match up. I didn't have the time. Like I was traveling a lot, doing stuff for like other companies, other brands. And so I think it was 2019 was the first time I actually made it out here to Nebraska and to 88 Tactical. And it was actually Jeremy Horn. They were putting on a private course for him and his friends. And so he's like, hey, do you want to come out and do this? And I was like, well, actually, for the first time in like 3 years, I don't have anything going on, so why not? So I came out, did the course, and I don't know if you guys, why can I not? Devin. I don't know if you guys have met or know Devin. Yeah, Devin was the one teaching the course, and so he had told him, he's like, hey, this chick's like actually legit. Like, and, I think she might be interested in, like, teaching or something. And at the time, like, it's a goal that I've had now since, like, 2015 is, like, one day I would like to become an instructor. But I didn't know what that path would look like. I didn't really have a clear direction on how to get there. And so when they presented that to me, 88 Tactical, Shay, and Kirk and all them, they're like, hey, how would you feel about doing this? I was like, fuck yes. Like I've literally been dreaming about this, for the last like 4 or 5 years. Like this has been a goal of mine. Like heck yeah. So I'd come out, did like the course, and it was a really tough course, and I did like a lot of stuff that I had never
do you remember
done before.
Which course it was?
It was like a mixture. So they did Devin had put together like this kind of mixed class, so we did like a lot of like handgun,
urban
carbine,
defender type thing.
Well, we did like handgun, carbine, like vehicle stuff, like nighttime, low light shooting. Like it was just like a mixture of a lot of shit that I had just never even really like encountered. So it was a lot of firsts for me, but it was a lot of fun. It was also August, and it was like 100 and fucking something degrees. And if you guys know the outdoor range at 88, how it's like an oven. There's no breeze, there's no shade. You're literally cooking like a fucking oven. Oh, and at the end of that, like 4 or 5 days, Devin's like, okay, let's pick up brass. That motherfucker didn't touch a single fucking piece of brass. He watched us all out there in the blazing hot sun picking up buckets of fucking brass. So, Devin, if you watch this, fuck you. But it was terrible. It was a lot of fun. And it was a great group of dudes. Like, Jeremy was super cool. All of his friends were super cool. They really let me in. I was the only, chick out there. And I think even Seth was out there, too. That was the first time I met Seth. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And they offered me a job. Like, before I'd even flown off to leave the next day, they called me and they're like, hey, would you move out here? Would you, be an instructor for us? Help us out with social media, like all that stuff. And I was just like, yeah. So I pretty much was like already dead set that I was going to be coming back to Nebraska before I left. And then October, I packed up my rinky-dink little truck, my dog, because that's pretty much all I had in my name. It was my truck and my dog, and that was it, and just kind of drove out here. And my truck barely made it. I was like 100 miles out from Omaha, and my truck was like starting to break down because it was like, it was trash. It was junk. And I was like, I might have to call somebody and hope somebody can come and get me, but I barely made it.
Was it a little culture shock to go from Oregon to here? No forests, no...
Yeah, so I had lived, when I was like 19, I'd moved to North Carolina, and I'd lived in North Carolina for 4 years, and I moved back to Oregon. So I had been back in Oregon for, like however many years before I moved out here to Omaha, and Yeah, Omaha is different than, the East Coast or the West Coast. The Midwest is a different animal. It's a different beast, and I don't mean it in a good way. I don't know why people live here, honestly. So,
Cost of living's low.
Yeah.
yeah, except for taxes. Are you kidding me?
Taxes are stupid.
The first truck I bought when I moved here, I cried when I found out how much I'd have to pay in taxes. And that was getting a discount from trading in my old truck. But I about shit my fucking pants. And I'm like, why do people pay this much to live in this, like, bumfuck state? Like, seriously, like, the summers are brutal. The winters are brutal. I never experienced negative degree temperatures until I moved here.
Really? Even up there?
No. At Southern Oregon, it's like, the climate's more like California. So
Okay.
it stays warm. Like, if it's 30 degrees in Southern Oregon, you're like, oh my God, it's fucking cold. You're like, this sucks. But... yeah, and then I got here and it was like negative 40 one day, and I was like, why the fuck do I live here? I was like, what the fuck? And then I experienced, like, big hail. It was like hail like this. I was like out walking, like, my old dog. We were just out, I was taking him out for a piss, and all of a sudden this stuff starts hitting the concrete, and we're both looking around like, what the fuck is going on? And I realized it was hail. And so his tail's tucked, he's like this, and I'm like this, and we're like running back to my apartment, and this state's brutal. Like, why the fuck did y'all like live here?
Did I see on Instagram when you did the outdoor survival?
Yeah.
You ran into shit weather then too?
Yeah, it was like negative 20 degrees.
Oh, nice.
It was,
Welcome to Nebraska.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you like live here for a few years. Then you're like outside living your best life when it's like negative, like, and I'm sleeping outside. That was a really good course though. And I want to do them again this year. Like start with the basic, the intermediate, do the advanced, because that is a really eye-opening experience. But it made me realize that I'm like better at doing hard things, I think, than I had originally thought. Like, because I moved here and I'm like, I'm not a cold weather creature. Like, cold weather, like, fuck no. Like, I lose circulation in my hands. I get whiny. I turn into like a total complaining, like, little bitch. Like, I just can't. I can't. But I did it, and it was fun. And now I know how to like set shit on fire and build a shelter out of a tarp and sleep on grass. So that's cool.
But you'll take your AC and heat every day.
Oh fuck yeah! I'm not gonna live without it.
Yeah. So you get out to Nebraska, and now you're a firearms instructor. What was your first couple? I don't know, maybe the first couple months of instructing. How did that go for you? What were some of those experiences like?
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like it was kind of like a little like rough at first. I think part of it is because I was like so nervous. I don't see myself as being like an authority type figure. So when I've got like a class full of people and they're looking at me like I am the authority in the room, it's like I am teaching you guys. Like I had a lot. It stressed me out like a lot, especially in the beginning. And then it was also extra stressful because it's like, talking about, Instagram and all the douchebag stuff, but then to deal with the douchebag stuff in person got like really hard, like if I'm dealing with some, me when I first moved here, what was I like 27, 26, whatever, and I've got like some 50-year-old dude who's taking the concealed handgun course, and he's only there because he has to do it to get his concealed handgun permit, but he thinks he knows fucking everything under the sun, but he's the most dangerous person in the fucking room, and I'm like having to reprimand him. Like they don't take it very nicely.
Well, and that's kind of what I was interested in talking about too, because the reason we started this podcast is there was this, kind of pervading idea through the culture that masculinity was toxic, right? And, I don't think masculinity is toxic, at least true masculinity, but there's certainly toxic men out there. And personally, I think that's due to a lack of masculinity. But, being a firearms instructor myself, I run into some of the same things. Like if I get guys who are former law enforcement or former military, and not all of them, but a lot of them think they know more than I do. And it's like, well, you're not shooting any better. You're paying to take my class. Why, and this isn't necessarily just CHP or the concealed handgun permit. This is, higher level courses. You're paying me to teach you and you're pushing back. And I can only imagine that's even worse for you. So I don't even know really where to take that question. I'm just interested in some of your experiences and how you think, maybe we can go about helping people fix it.
I just think a lot of it comes down to the ego, and you're totally right. I think like true masculinity is not toxic, but I think that pseudo masculinity is, where
That's
it's like
well
the
put.
guys who like puff up their chest and they think they are badass and they think they can do hard shit, but realistically they've never done fucking hard shit and they're little bitches. Like, those are that's the toxic part of masculine. But like true masculine dudes, like, I think they know how to like swallow their pride and adjust their ego and not be just like dickheads to everybody that they fucking encounter. So I've definitely had some very interesting experiences, like everything from, like there was one instance, there's a concealed hanging course, and I've got like 10 people out there on the range. There's like a husband and wife, and I'm going over stuff. We're talking about our draw process. And at one point the husband goes like, well, you said to do this earlier. And I was like, I like literally never said that. And he's like, no, you said this like 20 minutes ago. You said you got to do blah, blah. And I was like, I've literally never said that. And so we're going back and forth, and it gets to the point where he's like, no. And I was like, I turned to the class. I was like, did I say this at any point? And everybody's like, no. And the wife's like this, like to her husband, like, you're embarrassing me, because he was a total embarrassment. He's just being like a fucking dude. You could tell he just did not want to be there. He hated that I was the one teaching the fucking class, that I'm some like younger chick. He's some older dude, and he thinks he knows, all this shit. And he's like trying to make me look like I'm a fucking idiot. And so like I had to flip the script, and I had to be like, ask the class, I'm like, did I say this at any point? And I didn't want to make him look like a fucking moron in front of everybody, but it's like, if you're going to keep pushing it, like, I'll fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be the bad guy. Like, I don't want to have to force you to take this course. Nobody's forcing you to be
So
here.
you walk up to his wife and go, I'm so sorry.
No, you could tell. No, she literally mouthed that to me. She was like, I'm sorry. Like, after the race, she was like, I'm so sorry. Because she realized, like, her husband's being a total fucking tool. Or like I had another guy, this older guy, he had to be probably like in his 60s or something like that. And he talked like this, and he was from Texas. I think his name was Doug or something stupid like that. But at one point, he was like a danger to himself. He was a danger to everybody in the room. Like, we didn't even make it past like the dry fire with him, because he like would not take his fucking finger off the trigger. He would not stop pointing his handgun like every fucking direction. Like I gave him like multiple warnings, and I was just like, hey, you can't keep doing this. But he just like would not listen, like for the fucking life of him. And so I pull him aside, and I'm like, I can't allow you to, do the shooting qualification, because what I'm seeing, it's just really unsafe. And then he's like, well, what do you mean? Like, what the fuck? And so then I had to list, start to finish, every one of his safety violations. And I'm like, well, do you think that's fair now? And he's like, yeah. But then he also, like, the next day or a couple days later, he called to complain. Of course, he talks to Kurt. And if you know Kurt, he's like, he does not put up with bullshit. Like, he does not deal with bullshit. And so he calls Kurt, and he's like, and then he says, he's like, do you guys have a lot of problems with that angry little black girl?
Wow. No, we just have problems.
And Kurt's like,
angry
no,
Texas
we just have problems with people who aren't safe on the range, because Kurt knows, like, none of the instructors are gonna like boot somebody from class. And as someone like him, he's seen how sketchy people can be during the concealed hanging. So it's like, he trusts like all the instructors. Like, he knows, like, if somebody's calling, like, he knows if you got booted for a fucking reason. Right. Like, and so Kurt's just like, I think it's better, we're going to refund you money, just don't come back. Like, do not come back here,
What's scary, though, is that there are people just like him who are walking around armed.
Well,
sitting in their car waiting for somebody to piss him off or something.
You see that shit online, too.
I know, it's crazy.
It's always those, like, older, out-of-shape fucking dudes who think they're fucking masculine, but deep inside, they're, like, little fucking pussies. They think they're badass just because they got a gun, and then next thing you know, they're pulling it out for any random weird occasion, and you're like, what in the fuck? Like, those are the people who scare the shit out of me. I'm like, and now that we've got, constitutional carry here in Nebraska, we're
going to see it even more.
I think we're going to see it, even more. I mean, you just see, like, a lot of the misinformation that's spread. Oh, I also had another person call and complain because his daughter was in my class, and she had said something along the lines of, you shoot to kill. Like that always thing, like, you shoot to kill them, so there's no witnesses. And I'm like, don't say that to me. Don't say that to anybody else. Like, don't, like, that is a great way to end up in prison if you ever do use, firearm for self-defense. And I told her, I was like, no, like, nope, that is not the right type of, like, mentality, right? And then her dad called to complain, saying that I was, and again, Kurt's just like, no, you don't. Don't say that shit. That is not the right mentality to have. You don't just shoot, execute somebody, that is not legal in the majority of states.
So why, I guess, for both you guys, why are firearms associated with masculinity so badly? Or I guess, why is there such a correlation? What is it?
That's a good question.
Well,
To me, it's just another tool to me,
Yeah.
but yet I've always kind of acted like it's just a tool to
I
make
think
me.
here's one thing that could be a clue. Like I feel there's two very separate gun cultures. There's like the professional people who've been in law enforcement and military, at least special forces military generally, but not always. There's certainly talented guys from just regular military that are really interested in being safe and being very good. And then there's kind of this casual gun culture. I grew up with guns in the country and I've had them my whole life and I know what I'm doing, even if what they've been doing is wrong their entire life. And so when you have something like that, especially when somebody thinks they know what they do and you're trying to tell them otherwise, that becomes a problem. And I think, Trevor, back when we interviewed Trevor way at the beginning of this podcast, he said something along the lines of, when life and death is involved, dogma becomes very, very prevalent, because if you're relying on this thing to save your life and then you find out that you're wrong, or someone tries to tell you that you're wrong and the thing that you've kind of been,
Clinging to
for safety and security is wrong, like it's very difficult to get over in your head. And some people will be able to be like, I feel like everybody in this room is, somebody tells me I'm doing something wrong. Oh, I want to figure out the right way to do it. Versus, no, you're doing it wrong. Oh, well, no, you're wrong and I'm right. So I feel like that's part of it, because I certainly have gun friends who are very safe and well trained, and other gun friends who, like, I don't go out with them because they are not safe and they are not trained and they like to drink beer and shoot guns and they don't wear hearing protection, and it's just stupid stuff. So
I have a lot of people that in my circle that are very anti-gun, but they're like, we're okay with you having a gun, but I just don't think the rest of the people should have it. And I'm like, okay, what?
yeah,
Why? Because I train, and they're like, yeah. I go, well, isn't that what we're trying to do? Is get everybody trained? It's not the gun; it's the person behind the fucking thing that is the problem usually. Again, I just look at them as a tool, but I do feel like, especially growing up in Ireland, my exposure to America was movies, and all the heroes had guns. It was almost like, from John Wayne to John Wick, it doesn't matter. Like, the heroes always had guns. They always were American. And even though I'm not a gun nut, but I'm a gun enthusiast, it still fascinates me that there's such machismo associated to this tool.
I think we're starting to see a shift with that, though. Because if you look at, like, women are the fastest growing, like, demographic, specifically, like, black women, too, are the fastest growing demographic of, like, new firearms owners. So I think we're starting to see that kind of, like, shift now, where people are realizing how important it is as a tool, and not so much of, like, oh, that's just, like, a dude thing, that's just like, oh, what masculine men have is they have guns and they shoot. I think people are realizing, like, how important it is to actually, train with that tools, like, to practice with that tool, to learn how to use that tool, properly, safely, effectively. And I think it's cool now more than ever. I see, like, women who are taking it upon themselves, because it's like, well, your husband's not always going to be there. Your family's not always going to be there. Like, law enforcement can't always be there. I think they're starting to realize that. I think one thing that really kind of kicked that off was just, like, all the civil unrest, all the COVID, all the civil unrest, all the rioting. I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people and a lot of places. And I think even, like, women specifically. So I think I speak from what I've noticed. So I think that's kind of starting to shift,
I hope that's the case. I think another part of it too, and, as a firearms instructor, the most difficult people that I have to train are generally white-haired white men. White-haired white men are difficult. So white-haired white men, maybe, I don't know, think about this a little bit. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if they just think they know everything already, or I don't know what it is, but they are always the most difficult. I would say the second most difficult are probably older women, but also because I feel a lot of times, not every instance, but a lot of times they come in kind of nervous. And so they're more like joking with it. They don't take it nearly as seriously as they should. But I also think when it comes to firearms, if you're a person who might be a fearful person or a weak person, getting that gun makes you feel powerful, right? It gives you some power. And so I think that, you can over rely on that idea and that feeling of power. And just like when you're a trained fighter, you don't have anything to prove. But when you're not confident in your skill set and you're not confident in the fact that you could win a fight if it came down to it, then you feel like you need those ways to test yourself or prove yourself. And so I think that's maybe where some of that machismo comes from.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's kind of like the equivalent of like, the tiny little dude with a big jacked up truck.
Yeah.
It's like, he's got a little dick.
Yeah.
I got a big jacked up truck. No, I don't.
We learned something about Mick today.
I drive a Prius. What do you think
Josh
that
drives
means?
a Prius. Yeah. He's as low key as it gets. Yeah.
I tell you what, I don't get speeding tickets.
Yeah, don't mind me.
So
I'm just
that
out
sounds
here
like extra ironic,
saving the environment.
Because you're like a badass, like, like you would like roll somebody up into fucking knots, like beat the shit out of somebody and then like shoot, like, you've got like everything and then you're like Prius, like this is the chillest dude.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told
dropping my son off at soccer practice. Don't mind me.
I don't know if I told the story on the podcast, but I was driving to the gym one day and this guy, so a bus was parked in one lane. I passed the bus, and as I was changing back into the lane with the bus, I see in my mirror this guy like whips behind the bus and he really like drives fast into my lane. And I'm like, ooh, he's going to be mad at me because I'm already halfway in and it looks like he's trying to pass me, even though I'm already way ahead. Well, he decides he's going to go ahead and pass me anyway, gets up on the curb, and this is on Dodge Street, which is a really busy street, gets up on the curb, and then there's a light pole. And so he has to swerve over and he clips me. Right. So he sideswipes me on the front of my Prius. And then, of course, once he's in the lane, he slams on his brake and tries to get me to rear end him. So we end up pulling off into this parking lot of the urgent care. And this guy gets out of his Nissan Pathfinder. He's kind of a smaller Hispanic guy. And he's all puffing out his shoulders, like pissed off and strutting around. And I just stood up out of my car. And as soon as I stood up out of the Prius, he deflated. Oh, dude, I'm sorry, man. Like, I do body work. I'll fix that for you. So, yeah.
You're just like
anyway.
Not expecting that to get
Don't
out of the
cut
Prius.
off dudes in little cars, okay?
Yeah.
So kind of shifting away from the guns, one of the other things I've always been, or I'm not say always, but one of the things I've noticed now that I've gotten to know you better is you are just very good at getting good at things. I'm super impressed because when you came here, you were a firearms instructor, but then you started taking over, you started interest in photography and videography, and now you're like the lead videographer for 88 Tactical, putting out these really awesome videos. On top of that, like dog training, your dog Sega, like I knew you had a dog before him. I didn't really see much of that interaction, but what you've done with that dog is amazing. It's really, really cool to see. And then, beyond that, now you're starting to get in jiu-jitsu, and you just had your first jiu-jitsu tournament and you won gold. So, how do you go about choosing a new skill? Is it just something that interests you, something that pops up on your radar and you're like, I want to get good at it? And then how do you go about getting good at things so quickly and so proficiently?
ADHD. Everything. Like literally. I have a disorder that allows me to hyperfixate on things is really what it comes down to. So when I always tend to lean more towards creative stuff, okay. Right? So I've always, and I didn't even realize it until I was older, like the hyperfixation. Like when I was younger, my hyperfixation, I would say, was like art. Like all throughout my childhood, and you can see, like, I can go back and look through all my old sketchbooks as a kid, like to the point of where when I was 18, 19, I was a tattoo apprentice for a while. Like I hyperfixate so hard, and that apprenticeship is actually what like honestly ruined art for me. And so then I just like dropped it and didn't touch it. And then I hyperfixated just on like just fitness, not a specific thing in fitness, but like fitness. But I don't really know what things pick. It's like something picks me. Like I just see something and I'm like, man, that looks really fucking cool. I think I just want to do it. and then I just start doing it. But I don't do it at the level that a regular person would do it. It's like, no, it consumes my thoughts like 24/7. So like right now, my hyperfixation is jiu-jitsu. So like when I'm not here, I'm constantly watching like jiu-jitsu videos. I'm like reading articles. I'm doing whatever, like hyper fixate. So when I moved here, like, I don't know, like a year into living here, I had always had like a desire to learn photography and videography. Like it was always like a thing in the back of my mind where I was like, man, it would be really cool to do that, because I always just like the artistic expression of it. And so I, like, one day I was on the Facebook Marketplace. I found this old like Nikon like camera that someone was selling for like a couple $100, whatever. So I bought it, tried it, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. I was like, oh, new hyperfixation unlocked. And so then I just started like watching all the YouTube videos, watching all the things, looking at photography, learning, but not just learning about that, but learning about, you know, like composition. But the thing about learning art, you know, previously was that I already had a general idea of like composition, color theory, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, I want to try and apply this to photography now. Even though I would still watch and read and learn new things. So then I just hyperfixate on, like, that's all I would do. That's all I'd think about. I'd only think about, like, photos. Only think about videos. Only think about watching photo and video stuff. Like, learning from the best people there were out there. And that's, I think, the awesome thing about the day and age we live in is you can literally learn anything from YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, literally anything you want, you can find for free on YouTube. So at this point, I feel like there's no excuse to not learn something. You know, like something. So I just really hyperfixated on that for probably, you know, the last couple years or whatever. And then like dogs. So my last dog, like Arctos, he was a lab pit mix. You could talk to anybody who knew him. They would tell you he was like the best fucking dog in the world. And I know everybody says that about their dogs, but like, no, like he was like he was like the pinnacle of like dog. Like you can talk to anybody, greatest dog. And I never really I never really trained. Like I adopted him when I lived in North Carolina. I was like 19. I was lonely, and so I had him for literally almost a decade. Like he's the reason probably why I survived my 20s, because I was like, well, if I die, then who's gonna take care of my dog? So I guess I have to fucking live so that I can like take care of him, right? So he was just a good, like, just because he was literally with me 24/7, and then when he passed away, it just completely destroyed me. And so then the new dog I have now, Siga is actually how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
So Siga is Italian for saw, because the ongoing joke is like he's a chainsaw with fur, because he really is. So he's a Champenois, he's a Belgian Malinois, a German Shepherd mix, and he is like 100% fucking psycho.
Fur missile.
Like he's, oh my god, he's so fucking terrible. Like he's a... There was a lot to unpack with that dog, but yeah, I've always liked animals. Like one of my first kind of jobs is like I used to like ride horses, and I would like exercise horses for people, you know, like back in Oregon. So like I used to ride a lot. I used to do that, and you know I haven't ridden since it's been a long time since I've even touched a horse. But so I've always kind of had a knack for, you know, just like dealing with animals. And so Siga, you know, he had spent, you know, the majority of his life living in the Humane Society. And if you know anything about working dog breeds, is they deteriorate like really fast when they're stuck, like trapped in a kennel, you know, like they need a lot of attention, and more attention I think the average person can really provide. So he had been adopted out multiple times, returned multiple times. He was on enough like anti-anxiety medication to probably like kill a person. Like a person could probably overdose. Like it was a lot. So I was able to like work with him, wean him off of that. And I think I had really kind of developed an interest because 88 Tactical, they have their canine program, their law enforcement canine program. And I spent a week with them in Nevada when they were teaching a course, because I was doing all the video stuff for them. And so it just was like one of those things where it's like, I'm going to hyperfixate on you for a while. Like, you're going to be a new hyperfixation. So I got to learn a lot from our canine handlers. And so I just kind of took that and applied it to the dog, you know, Siga, and now he's off of his drugs for the most part. He's a really good, really sweet, good, like loving dog. I mean, he has his moments where he's a total dickhead. But he's just a good dog. So it's ADHD. I think that's it. That's the key to, if you can get ADHD kids, you can take over the world pretty much.
So you're saying maybe you shouldn't medicate yourself out of ADHD?
I would say that's probably the worst thing you could do.
You work your way out of it.
You I think people who feel like they need to medicate probably just haven't found tools to deal with it. They probably just don't have a good enough outlet to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm a little older than you guys. I come from an era where if I went to high school or grade school here, being the way I was about fitness and training, I would have had some fucking Yahoo counselor talk to my parents saying, I think your child has a problem. He runs to school and then he runs home at lunch and he shadow boxes in the cafeteria. Like, he should probably be on some medication.
So violent.
Yeah, but to everybody in Ireland, they're like, no, he's just a normal kid in the neighborhood, like, nothing wrong with him. But I think we're very quick to diagnose people with ADHD. But if you look at, like, you talk about being creative, most creative people nowadays would be considered on the spectrum, whatever the spectrum happens to be at this time.
Are you trying to say I'm autistic too,
No,
Nick?
but I'm just saying that if you have this creative side or this quest for knowledge and you exercise it, then I don't think you do need medication or anything like that. I think it's just a normal person's quest for or hunger for knowledge or learning a skill. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And same thing with your dog. Like, you have a working dog that wants to, like, they're bred to work. So when they don't, they're sitting there going
become
crazy.
Destructive.
Yeah. I
know?
mean, I'd be the same way if somebody, when I went through my shoulder injury stuff, I was fucking going nuts. Yeah, probably like some of the darkest time of my life because I couldn't train the way I wanted to, or, I would imagine it's just the same. If you have this creative side or this energetic side and then all of a sudden it's stifled or taken away from you, it blows. Doesn't mean you're sick. Just fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So you figure out other ways to get it done,
Yeah.
that don't involve criminal activity.
Criminal activity. I mean, I probably could have easily been if I didn't find something positive to hyperfixate on.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have been a criminal, but yeah, I totally get that. Like, I'm like my dog in the fact that I have to be mentally and physically stimulated. Like, if I am not one or the other, then I start to get really fucking weird. Like, if I am hurt, like injured in some sort of way where I can't like hit the gym, because it's like, you guys see me, like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu like 4 or 5 days a week. Like, I don't know if you guys know that, but then I still go to the gym and like work out 4 or 5 days a week on top of that. Like, I have to be like probably more physically active, I would say, than the average person. And like, even growing up, I was like that in a way. Like, I did a lot of hard physical labor, like, growing up, like, if we wanted to stay warm in the winter, we had to have firewood because we did not have central heating and air. So if we didn't spend the summer, cutting, stacking, making sure we had firewood, you're gonna like freeze your ass off. Or like in the summers, like, we had like a gravel driveway, I would literally just go run our driveway. I would run sprints. As a child, I would just be doing sprints around our fucking driveway, like a fucking, like, what kids, like, I don't even, like, now we live in a time where kids don't even do any physical activities, all video games and stuff. And, growing up, I had some video games, like I had a Nintendo 64 and stuff, but it was like my younger brother would like do that shit. And I would be like outside, like they would have to kick him off video games. And I would just like, I'm bored of this. Like, I can't sit in front of I can't even, it's hard for me to get through a whole movie. Like, I can't sit for that because I'm just like,
yeah.
Okay, like, what now? I'm bored. Like, I need to like do
Aging
something.
will fix that.
Aging,
it will.
Maybe will, because now I'm getting better at sitting through movies.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a part of getting older. But it's gonna be like a really good.
You realize that
movie.
after a while, when you run hard, you need to recharge a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, I do.
It's important.
Like, but like, if I'm not exercising really hard, like, I won't sleep. And then if I don't sleep, and then I'm exhausted, and then I get shitty, and my attitude gets bad. Like, like, if I don't go to the gym for like a week, like, I'm a shithead. Like, I'm just not a nice person to be around.
I can relate. Luckily, my job is the gym, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, lucky you.
Cool. We are coming up on going about hour 15.
I got something. So, you obviously were inspired by female firearms instructors, and now lately at 88 Tactical, that's kind of come full circle because now you are teaching female instructor firearms for women only classes, which is something new there. You want to talk a little bit about that kind of coming full circle for you, where you know you have a room full of strictly women that are learning from a woman?
Yeah. You know, I didn't really think about it, but yeah, it really has kind of come full circle for me. So when I first moved here, like that was one of my goals, is to have, you know, like some women's only class. It's taken a while, you know, to get there. Now I'm coming up on like 4 years later, and finally have that. So yeah, I developed, you know, like my own, you know, women's only like course. It's actually going to be a series, and now we're going to start doing like women's only, you know, like in the intro to hand course specifically, and then women's only like intro to carbine course, because it's like the more I was in front of women and like doing that, then the more they were like, well, do you do this? Do you do that? Like, can we get this? Can we do women's only? Because I think women just like to be in that environment where they feel like they can be like 100% themselves, and they're not worried about being judged by, you know, some guy who's been, you know, shooting for however long.
Right.
You know, they can feel like they can ask the questions that they think, you know, somebody else might think is stupid or whatever. You know, they can chat, they can have, it's like girl time. Like, and I've noticed that like teaching the course, like they like to talk a lot, which I guess isn't necessarily like a bad thing, but it's definitely more like chit chatty and like friendly, and it's just like a cool environment where women can encourage each other, you know, to be better, and they know it's kind of like their own like little safe space. And I think that's one thing that we've kind of noticed. It's like with the courses there, it's like women tend to, you know, take intro to handgun, they'll do the concealed handgun just because it was required to get a concealed handgun, and then they kind of like stop. You know, if you take, you know, like handgun 1, 2, 3, 4, like the higher you get in those levels, the less you see women in those levels. You know, there's kind of drop off. And I think a lot of it is just that intimidation factor, is they don't want to feel like they're holding up the class because maybe they have more questions or they're more unsure about what they're doing, you know. And sometimes there's, you know, certain things that it's just easier to communicate to a woman, like as a woman, you know. Not to say like all the instructors, you know, Josh, everybody, they're all great, but I think for a lot of women it's just the intimidation factor,
absolutely.
You know, and just getting over that hump. So yeah, I've been really excited to do that. I have a lot of fun, and now I don't know if you guys are familiar with Patricia, but I'm going to bring her on board so that she can help, you know, start teaching, because she's been taking a lot of classes, learning the curriculum.
She's there all the time, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I'm really excited to be able to, like, help, like, mentor her and get her into, like, doing that, because she's been helping me out with, like, my women's only handgun course, and she, by far, like, saves my life every time. You know, I can, if I have somebody who's, you know, maybe not quite where they should be, I can, like...
Yeah.
She just babysits them, and she just like has that natural tendency to, you know, do that. So I'm really excited to not only be teaching, but to be able to mentor another woman
the next breed of
And so I'm really thankful that I've had the opportunity and been able to do that.
Well, I'm looking forward to you, you know, continuing with jiu-jitsu and getting to the point where you can eventually teach, because I wish more women would do jiu-jitsu, but I think it's probably even more of an intimidation factor there, because learning how to shoot a gun is one thing. Rolling around on the ground with, you know, a man can be really intimidating. So,
well,
at least at the outset.
I may be getting ahead of myself, but it is in the works at 88 to develop a women's jiu-jitsu program taught for women by women.
Awesome.
So, and we do have a course
coming up. You need to get
up.
back to Aaron about that. He told me to bring it up. I was on the call with him actually on the drive here. You need to get back to him about the course that's supposed to be finished by like tomorrow. So.
It is done.
Yeah, no, that's something that I brought up to Aaron. Like I was talking to Aaron the other day about, you know, even if we could do like one day a week where we have like just a women's only
we're getting there
class.
Numbers wise. We're certainly
because there's
really
a lot.
close.
Like I show up to like a Wednesday class or something, and a lot of times there can be a lot of women. Sometimes like there was one day there was like 10 women in there.
It was only women, yeah.
Yeah, and that was like that Thursday was only women, and then the day before that I think there was like 10 women and just like the, you know, beginner class. But that's even more, like you said, that's even more more of a hurdle. It's like to think about, rolling around with dudes and being all sweaty. And one thing I always tell women, I was just like, it might seem intimidating, but wait until you choke a dude out for like the first fucking time and it feels really good. And they're like, yeah, actually.
And I think too, the women's class I think is probably going to be a primer, because once they start doing it and getting good, then it's not as uncomfortable, and then they're less intimidated to work into the regular classes. So I think it's a great thing moving forward. So.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, my hyperfixation on jiu-jitsu will probably be because I mean, I stopped. I made the choice, earlier this year to stop kind of like my regular like weight training and stuff. Like, I made the decision that I'm not going to try and go for like another tactical games just because it was so hard on my body last time, and the events just kind of get crazier and crazier. I'm like, the risk versus reward, it's just not really, there for me. And so I'm just not going to train for that. I'm not going to do that. And I was like, I have to have I'm such a competitive person. That's like I'm competitive to the point of where it's probably a fucking disorder, because it's like, no matter what I do, like no matter what I hyperfixate on, one of my next thoughts is, could I compete in this? Like literally, like even with my dog, I don't know if you guys have seen like the protection style like competitions, like shut sound or whatever, I was like, I wonder if my dog and I could do this. Like literally, like anything I hyperfixate on, it's like, because I'm so competitive, I'm like, I wonder if I could compete. That's why it's like when I jiu-jitsu, I was like, when I started up again this year, I was like, I started up with the intent of like, I'm going to try and compete and see how it goes. And it turned out to go good. Not because I'm good, because the person sucked worse than I did. So I happened to.
That's all of hey, that's all of winning. All winning is that you sucked less than everybody else that day.
So I'm like, okay, we'll do it again. So I want to do that grappling industries in September. And so that was actually funny last night in class, Scott, he's like, whoever's planning on competing, like line up over there on the wall. And I was just like laying there and he's like, Thea, aren't you competing? I was like, yeah, but I'm just going to sandbag because it's not till September. He's like, I'll let you sandbag for 2 more weeks and then you're going to.
And you're back on it.
And then you're back on. I was like, okay, 2 weeks. And I can, that's fair or whatever. But yeah, so anything I do, I want to be competitive. And I think I have a natural knack for teaching too. It doesn't matter what, every job I've ever worked in, I was a trainer. I always was responsible for training people. I've written training programs for businesses. I've done that because I just I like being able to pass on information to people. And I mean, maybe I am good at it, maybe I'm not good at it, but I feel like I have a knack for passing along information in a way that people can digest it, whether they're, visual learners or whatever, I think I'm pretty good at figuring that out for the majority of people. So when I don't suck one day at jiu-jitsu, yeah, that would be awesome to be able to instruct, but I think I got a long ways to go before we'll cross that bridge.
Always suck. As soon as you think you got somewhere, you'll see something, or you're like, oh man.
Well, I just saw a meme. It was the different belts and what you feel like white belts, oh man, I suck. There's so much I need to learn about this. And then there's another one, blue belt is this. And then it goes all the way to black belt, and black belts, oh man, I suck. There's so much to learn. Right?
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
So moving forward, what are you hoping to accomplish in the next 5-10 years? Have you thought that far ahead? What would you like to see? Where would you like to see yourself down the road?
I can't even figure out what I'm going to do next week, let alone I've never been good at planning stuff, but I just, I see myself, I don't know, probably just doing a lot of the same shit that I'm doing now. I don't know, maybe 5 years from now, I'll have something new to hyperfixate on. But for now, I just take it every day as it comes. Right now, I'm just all about, jiu-jitsu, being healthy. I'm all about my dog, all about taking photos, videos, I don't know, maybe one day I hope I can, do some really cool videos for some really cool companies. I don't really know. I'm just kind of day by day and just go wherever the wind blows me, I guess.
Awesome.
Good attitude.
Yeah. Well, it's been a really, really fantastic conversation. Thanks so much for coming in. Looking
you.
forward to releasing this. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from it. So, thanks for being a part of it. And we'll look forward to seeing where you are in 5 years. So.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Hope it didn't suck.
We'll catch you next time.